everyone. It's great to be here. So my name is Obi Felten, and I'm a product director at Google X. We're the team that works on projects like this: self-driving cars, self-flying delivery vehicles, smart glasses, smart contact lenses, and internet from balloons. Oh, and energy kites. Contrary to rumors, we're not working on a space elevator, but all the other projects are real. So as Xavier said, the spirit of Hello Tomorrow is to highlight innovative technologies that can improve the lives of billions. But it's also about the people behind those technologies. Because great products are all about people. They're about you, the inventors and entrepreneurs who are passionate about solving a problem. And they're about your users, the people who use your products every day, or tell you why they don't. In the next half an hour, I'm going to share some stories about some of the projects we work on at Google, why we work on them, and also about the people behind them. I'll also talk a lot about problems, and that's deliberate. By the end of my talk, I want you all to love problems, and I want to encourage you to get out of the lab and into the real world as soon as possible with your technology to see if it will actually solve the problem. Google X has been called Google's lab of wildest dreams, but we're not just a technology lab. Because technology by itself doesn't make an impact unless it's solving a problem. So here, these three circles represent our approach to our projects. First, we start with a large problem, something that, if it was solved, would affect the lives of millions or even billions of people in the world. Then we propose a radical solution, something that sounds like science fiction today. And we look for breakthrough technologies that enable that solution over the next 5 or 10 years. Let's take an example, self-driving cars. If you go to the next slide. That was the first ever Google X project. And there are many problems with road transportation. Obviously, today in Paris, there are many. So, you're still coming in. But traffic isn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem is actually safety, in that 1.2 million people die on the road each year. And our project was started by Sebastian Schön. He was a German roboticist whose best friend died in a car accident when he was 18. So Sebastian's radical solution was to take the driver out of the car. And for much of the 20th century, that was science fiction, as you can see in this wonderful ad from 1957, where people are sitting in the back of a car while their car is speeding along an electric superhighway. That's what it says in the ad. And I love particularly that the people are playing dominoes, whereas today's family would probably all be sitting there checking their smartphones. In the last 10 years, computer vision, mapping, processing power, sensors have all come a really long way. And they're the breakthroughs technologies that actually enable self-driving cars. So can we play the first video, please? This is a video of what our car sees. We first drive all the streets manually to make a really, really detailed map. So the car knows where it is, it even knows what lane it is and where the lanes are. It then has sensors that detect objects all around it for up to 200 meters away. And our software then classifies the objects. So you can see the boxes that are the vehicle, but you can also see pedestrians and cyclists. And that's so obviously we want to be able to drive safely around them. We've driven over 1 million miles testing our hardware and software, mostly in California. I personally passed my driving test on the 3rd attempt in London, and I'm still a terrible driver, so I can't wait for self-driving cars to come around. But much more importantly, we hope to transform the lives of the millions of people who today can't drive at all. So let's skip the rest of this, because it goes on for quite a while, and let's go to the next video, which is a short documentary film that features our first self-driving car user, Steve Mahan. And for this one, we need sound. Okay, great.
Good morning, Steve.
Hey, Nathaniel, how are you?
Doing just great.
Go ahead, Steve.
Come on, no hands. No hands anywhere.
No hands, no feet.
No hands, no feet, no nothing. I love it. So we're here at the stop sign. Yep. Car's using radars and laser to check and make sure there's nothing coming either way.
I find myself looking.
Old habits die hard, man.
They don't die. Hey, anybody up for a taco?
Yeah. What do you want to do today, Steve?
I'm all for Taco Bell myself.
All right. Well, let's go get a taco at the drive-thru.
And we're turning into the parking lot.
Yep.
How neat.
There we go. Now we kind of creep along here. Does anybody have any money?
I've got money.
No, I've got my wallet right here. You roll down your window and order a burrito. Yeah, push that up.
I'm doing very well. How are you today? This is some of the best driving I've ever done.
.95% of my vision is gone. I'm well past legally blind. You lose your timing in life, everything takes you much longer. There are some places that you cannot go, there are some things that you really cannot do. Where this would change my life is to give me the independence and the flexibility to go the places I both want to go and need to go when I need to do those things.
Get out. I've got places I have to go.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Bye now.
And it's been nice.
Yeah.
It's been nice.
That film is not a Google marketing film. It was actually made by a young documentary maker who is a Brit that now lives in the Valley. So you might wonder why Google, originally a search company, is now working on self-driving cars, right? Google X is not actually something entirely new and distinct from Google itself. But it's a manifestation of the entrepreneurial spirit that has always run through the company. When Larry and Sergey first set up Google, they did this because they shared a sense of optimism about the positive impact that technology can have on the lives of people. And in fact, they wrote this in their first letter to shareholders in 2004, where they said, "We want to develop services that significantly improve the lives of as many people as possible." And when Sergey just wrote the last letter to shareholders, they do this every year now, last month, he wrote about the projects that he's now overseeing at Google X, like self-driving cars and a smart contact lens for diabetics. That means you can get a continuous read of glucose in your tear fluid as opposed to pricking your finger continuously. Many of the things that Google worked on over the years sounded impossible at first. Organize the world's information and allow you to search it by talking to your phone, or driving every single street in the world to make a detailed map that you can also carry around with you on your phone. That's today, we take that for granted. Sometimes it still doesn't work, like the map today led me to the back of this building, but I still found the entrance. Or you can translate in real time, so you can talk to somebody who doesn't speak your language. They all sound like science fiction, but they're all real Google products today. Let's talk a bit about Google Translate. That's actually one of our oldest projects. The project started in 2001 because Larry and Sergey realized that much of the information of the internet was in English, and most of the world does not speak English. So wouldn't it be great if we could just translate it for them? Today, you can point your phone at a sign or at a restaurant menu, and it will translate it into your language. This is a feature called Word Lens, and it was actually a startup that we bought and integrated in 2014. So that's how it works today, but that's not how it worked in the early days. When we first launched Google Translate, the quality was so bad that people laughed at us. And part of the problem is that translation is really hard if you ask a machine to do it. And it wasn't until 2006, when we switched to a new method called statistical machine translation, that things started improving. So in statistical machine translation, you don't try and apply grammatical rules. What we do is we take millions and millions of documents that are translated into multiple languages, and we compare them. So the first documents we started with were actually official documents from the UN, because they helpfully published them in 6 languages. It turned out the European Union was even more helpful, because they had published everything in 24 languages. They may not be the most exciting bits of content, but they're very useful for machine learning. So today, we support over 90 languages, and the product is used by 500 million users. Here are 2 of them. Mac McClelland and her husband, Nico Ansel. They met in Haiti after the earthquake. She's an American journalist. She spoke almost no French. He was a peacekeeper, a UN peacekeeper from France, and he spoke almost no English. So she tells this great story in the Washington Post about how when they first met, all of their interactions were through Google Translate, in email and in chat, and using the phone app. Of course, this led to a lot of hilarious moments, like, for instance, when he heartily congratulated her on her hornbeam, which for some reason, that's what the software thought how you should translate charm. But the interesting thing was that when they met again after 7 months, his English was much improved, all from their conversations in Google Translate. She doesn't talk about how good her French had gotten, interesting enough. If you use conversation mode on your phone, you can actually pass the phone back and forth between the 2 of you. So you speak in your language, the phone talks back, and so on. And that's particularly useful if you don't even know what language the other person is speaking. And that's exactly what 2 Irish paramedics did recently. They were on their way to hospital with a heavily pregnant woman who had gone into labor. And before they got there, about halfway, they realized that they were going to have to deliver the baby there and then, on the road. But they didn't even know what language she was speaking. So one of them took out his smartphone, opened the Translate app, and Translate worked out that she was speaking Swahili. And they were able to communicate with her entirely through Google Translate, so they delivered the baby safely on the roadside. So Google Translate is still not perfect translation, but today it's good enough so that you can communicate when it really matters. And I think that's science fiction in real action. Now let's talk a little bit more about problems and how to pick the right problem to work on. At Google X, we have a small team called Rapid Evaluation, or Rapid Eval. And they're a team of inventors, of makers, and of product managers. And we look at new ideas that Google X maybe should be working on. And we quickly evaluate them by going to prototype as fast as possible. And most of the things we work on never see the light of day. And that's the idea. That's actually the goal of the team, because we want to fail really, really fast. Those of you who are working on a startup are also in this kind of rapid eval mode. And here's probably the single biggest thing that I've learned in the last couple of years. Don't fall in love with the technology before you have found a use case for it. So we now have a bucket that we call orphan technologies in search of a use case. And if we can't find a use case, no matter how cool the technology is, we stop the project. You need to ask yourself, who is the user? Why would they use this? How would it make their lives better? And then make a prototype and put it in front of them and get their feedback. For example, last year, we made some prototypes of hoverboards. Back to the future, remember? And we actually got as far as levitating a few bits of carbon off some magnets. And we were fairly certain that we could actually build a hoverboard. But we couldn't really think of the problems that this would be solving, except maybe a global lack of hoverboard skateboard parks. So we decided this was not really worthy of a next project. Now let's talk a bit more about problems specifically. How many of you love problems? Can I see a show of hands? You love problems? Okay, interesting. Must be a lot of engineers in this audience. Engineers usually love problems. But the reality is most people don't love problems. We hate problems. You know, marriage problems, problem children, traffic problems, money problems. They're all things we would rather not have in our lives, and we run away from them as fast as possible. We treat them like monsters. Now, I want to encourage you that you don't run away from the monsters, but that you are like Max in Where the Wild Things Are, which is one of my favorite children's books. Max doesn't run away. He runs towards the monsters, and he spends time with them, and he becomes their king. So we need to spend more time with our problems. Now, when I first thought about this, I very much thought of problems like an onion. You know, you peel a layer off, you cry, you peel another layer off, you cry again, etc. But a friend at Google X said, no, you're thinking about this all wrong. Don't think of it as an onion. Think of it like a ladder. You climb up the top of the ladder, which is really hard work. But when you're on the top of the ladder, you're rewarded with an amazing view. And then, to paraphrase Wittgenstein, you can kick the ladder away. So let's take Project Loon as an example, which is about bringing the internet to the whole world through a network of high-altitude balloons. This is Rich DeVore, one of the Rapid Eval guys, and he actually proposed this idea a few years ago. Rich broke down the problem as follows. If you want to give internet to a village in Africa, you need three things. You need a device that's cheap enough. You need power to bring electricity to that device. And then you finally need the connectivity. And Rich decided to focus on the connectivity part, and he figured that other people would solve the other parts of the problem. Now, of course, that's exactly what happened. In the last 4 years, since we've been working on Project Loon, the cost of smartphones has plummeted, the cost of solar panels has plummeted, but the cost of connectivity is still really high. And that's because the infrastructure is expensive. It costs a lot of money to put cables into the ground or to build cell towers. So Rich's radical solution was to instead use a network of balloons that fly 20 kilometers high up in the altitude, in the stratosphere, way above any airplanes. That sounded crazy, right? There's a reason it was called Project Loon. Rich made a list of all the reasons that this would be impossible to do. It would be impossible to have the balloons from 20 kilometers up connect to a device back down on Earth. It would be impossible for the balloons to communicate with each other. It would be impossible to power them through the long, dark, cold nights of the stratosphere. It would be impossible to move the balloons up and down so that we could steer them. Rich recruited a couple of other engineers to the project, who also told him he was crazy. And together they worked through the list of objections and they knocked them out one by one. They bought some weather balloons on the internet. They built a Wi-Fi transmitter out of parts that they bought in an electronics shop. They sent the balloon up, and amazingly enough, they actually got a connection. So one by one, they got rid of all the reasons not to do the project, and Project Loon was born. But of course, that's only when the real work began, right? So there were many, many challenges on turning Loon from a kind of experimental prototype and an idea into a product that's ready for contact with the real world. And it turned out that one of the problems that Rich had really underestimated was leaks. You know, the day after a birthday party when the fun helium balloon has come back down to Earth and your child is all sad because it doesn't fly anymore? That was me a few weeks ago when my daughter turned 2. And that was our life during the early days of the Loon balloons. Because it turned out that they didn't last so long. To make the economics work, we needed the balloons to last at least 100 days. That was our goal. Our first balloons lasted 5 days, so we were a very long way off. So we set up a leak squad. The leak squad studied many other products where leaks were important, like bags that chips come in, or sausage casings, or even condoms. They put soap on the outside of the balloons to see if any bubbles were forming. They got a helium detector, a kind of wand that makes a high-pitched noise when it comes across leaking helium. They tested in very cold weather to see if that would make a difference. They tried many things, and most of what they came up with was useless, but occasionally an experiment was very useful. For example, they ran one experiment in our factory where we make the balloons. And they tested whether the socks that the workers were wearing would make a difference, because they have to walk around on the balloons while they make them. So they did a line dance. This is a very fuzzy photo because someone just took it on their mobile. This is a line dance that people did, first in normal socks, and then they used super soft, fluffy socks. And it turned out that, yes, the fluffy socks actually made a difference. So now only fluffy socks are allowed in our balloon factory. So through these improvements in both the dance design and the manufacturing process, our balloons now last over 100 days. In fact, our longest record flight was 187 days, more than half a year. So over the last 2 years, we've made a lot of advances in the technology. But technology isn't enough to make this a successful project. To get Loon out into the world and into the hands of users, we need partners. We made a decision very early on that we didn't want to compete with mobile phone companies head-on, but instead that we wanted to partner with a local company in each market. And that's because they own the most valuable parts of the mobile spectrum. And they also have a customer service infrastructure to support billions of mobile phone users, something that Google doesn't actually have. And they want to work with us because we allow them to fill the holes in their network much cheaper than their existing infrastructure would cost them. So it works for both sides. And we've now done tests with companies like Telstra, Telefonica, and Vodafone, and are in commercial discussions with phone companies across the world. Our smart contact lens is another example. For that project, we actually partnered with Novartis because they know how to manufacture contact lenses. They know how to make and sell medical devices, not things that Google is good at. And for our self-driving cars, we have many manufacturing partners already, including companies in Europe like Continental and ZF Lenksysteme. And to build our first prototype, we partnered with Rouge, who is a contract manufacturer in Detroit, the heart of the car industry in the US. To take this technology beyond a prototype and make it more widely available, we want to and we have to partner with car companies. So in all of these projects, we're choosing to partner with somebody instead of going it alone. And that often means giving up a substantial part of the upside in return for their expertise. But the reason we do this is because this is not just about business. This is about solving a problem. And if we want to connect the next 4 billion people or make the roads safer, then we have a much better chance of doing that faster and getting there at all if we partner. So the next time you think about your competitors and you think about how you can outcompete them, ask yourself, could I partner with them instead? Could I convince them to partner with me? Because I tell you, if you're working on very large problems, it's a lot nicer if you don't have to do that all by yourself. I want to finish by taking it back to the people who really matter, the users. At any point in the development process, it's super important to get their feedback. And at Google, we have changed around entire projects, sometimes too late in the day, based on user feedback. Let me tell you the story of an extreme example of this. About 2.5 years ago, we gave a handful of Google employees a Lexus car equipped with our self-driving technology. And we asked them to use that car in the daily commute to and from Mountain View. At that point, the technology, yes, this car. At that point, the technology was good enough to drive on highways only. So we asked the testers to drive manually to the highway, then on the highway they switched into self-driving mode. And then when they left the highway, the last bit to the office, they had to drive again. And we were feeling pretty good about ourselves. We thought, we had solved the most difficult part of the problem, because people complained most about highway driving. It's really boring, it's really repetitive, the traffic is stop and go, and so on. But it turned out that we couldn't have been further from the truth. Because when people got into the car, we realized two things. So one, people complained that they couldn't drive the whole way in self-driving mode. They said, this is lame. Why can't the car do the whole way? Now you could say, this was Google employees. They're sometimes a bit spoiled. People also complain about the free food sometimes. But the second part was a more fundamental insight, which was that people stopped paying attention as soon as the car was in self-driving mode. We had one guy who actually turned around and rummaged around in the back of his car looking for a phone charger, turning his back onto the windscreen and onto the road. So this idea that the driver could be the backup, that if a really difficult situation would arise that the car can't handle, they could jump back in, was a complete fallacy. And that was fundamental. At this point, we stopped the experiment, and the team had a choice. Do we keep going on building this product of driver assist, of something that helps you drive more efficiently on the motorway? Or do we start again and build a car that completely drives itself, that doesn't need a driver, that can get from A to B just with the push of a button? And the team decided to go for the latter choice. They chose the more audacious goal of building a truly autonomous car. And a year ago, we announced our prototype, which is the next slide. It looks like this. It's kind of cute. It's clearly not a real car yet. Although, as I said, it was built with the help of many car manufacturing people. But it's early days. We have a long way to go. It did enable us, however, to put people back into the car and see how they would react to this car that doesn't have a steering wheel and that doesn't have pedals. And the next film is the initial reactions. So we need sound again.
Today, we have something extra special for you guys, and you guys will be some of the first people outside of our team and outside of Google to ever ride in it.
Oh, there it is. Oh, isn't that cute?
Go ahead and buckle up.
Okay, Annie, here we go. All right, Cody, let's go. There's no steering wheel in the way.
It was a big decision for us to go and start building our purpose-built vehicles for this. And really, they're prototype vehicles. They were a chance for us to explore what does it really mean to have a self-driving vehicle. But in the small amount of time we've been working on it, we have functional prototypes, and that's exciting.
It's really cool. It was like really kind of a space age experience.
Okay. Hooray. We're like queens. Yeah.
You said relax. You don't need to do nothing. It knows when it needs to stop. It knows when it needs to go.
It actually rides better than my own car.
Yes, sure.
What she really liked was that it slowed down before it went around a curve and then accelerated
In the
curve. She's always trying to get me to do it that way.
That's the way I learned in a high school driver's ed.
So if I had a self-driving car, I could spend more time hanging out with my kids or helping them with their homework, even just tending to them, finding out how their day was and not having to wait till you get home and have dinner and all that. So it'll be good.
Human feeling of it is very well engineered, and it is very smooth. There's nothing that makes you feel the least bit threatened. It's impressive. I'm totally in love with this whole concept.
Our lives are made up of lots and lots of little things. And a lot of those little things for most people have to do with getting from place to place in order to connect and do things, be with people, go places that they need to go and do things. And so there's a big part of my life that's missing, and there's a big part of my life that a self-driving vehicle would bring back to me.
This is the first step for us, and it's really exciting to see the progress we've made. The opportunity for people to just move around and not worry about it, it's going to be incredibly empowering and incredibly powerful for people.
I love this!
So these were real people. They were our neighbors in Mountain View, where the team is based, as opposed to Google employees. And what I love about the film is that they're all smiling. So it always makes me smile. So even if you're not working on self-driving cars or internet from balloons or machine translation, I hope that you can take something away from our approach. And this here is my personal list of things that I believe to be universal, whatever problem you're working on. So first of all, fall in love with problems, not technology. Spend time with the problem, don't run away from it. Monsters are your friends. And if you find yourself working on a technology that doesn't solve a real problem, stop. Second, partner with experts who share the same goal, who want to solve the same problem as you, even if they maybe look like your competitors at first. Seek out the help of others. And then finally, most importantly, focus on the users and make sure that you're solving their problem. And if you're not, change the product. Nobody knows the right way to solve a problem, especially big, difficult problems like this. So the best we can do is to pursue our ideas, to take them out into the world as fast as possible so we can see what works and what doesn't work and start again. So thank you and good luck. Great.